Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carol Robles Roman, President and CEO of Legal Momentum, the Women's Legal Defense and Education Fund, and welcome to New York State PowHer Women's Equality Wednesday Google Hangout. This is a nonpartisan statewide network committed to securing economic equality for all New York women. And I'm really excited to be moderating today's conversation around one of my favorite topics, workplace fairness. How to create a workplace that actually works for families and the realities of women's lives. This week we're going to discuss how, as a society, we create work and family balance. Now, we invite questions and comments from you, so tweet your questions. Lots of great questions are encouraged using the hashtag PowHerList or click on the Google Hangout question function. Now, my great Hangout guests today are Donna Dolan, who is Executive Director of Time to Care New York, a coalition of organizations working together for paid family leave laws in New York. Our second guest is Nancy Rankin, Vice President of Policy, Research, and Advocacy for Community Services Society, which looks to reform how, as a society, we help poor people out of poverty, including New York working families. And our third guest is Adamola Orefeso, Political and Legal Director at Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store International Union, which represents 100,000 retail and wholesale workers in the United States and Canada. Now, I'm going to start with some powerful numbers just to set the stage for our conversation. And this is some research from a recent Pew report on modern parenting. Now, women make up almost half of the United States workforce. Almost 70% of working mothers have children under 18, and 61% of those women are single moms with children under 3 while employed. So now what we have are super moms who are increasingly the sole, really the breadwinners of the family, or the co-breadwinner, and at the same time, they're the primary caretakers, whether it's their child or an elderly parent, and being pulled aside with a lot of different competing obligations. So we're going to start with you, Donna. Let's talk about the great work that Time to Care New York has done. You and your organization were a strong force behind the Paid Family Leave Coalition for New York State. Why is paid family leave such an essential employee benefit?
Carol, I didn't hear the last few sentences that you said. My screen froze.
Yes. What we want to hear about the work that your organization has done around paid family leave.
Sure.
And if you can tell us, why is paid family leave such an essential employee benefit?
Thank you, Carol. And I'd just like to start out with one edit. I'm the Executive Director of the New York Paid Leave Coalition, and our website is the Time to Care New York. And I am one of the steering committee members of the New York State Paid Family Leave Insurance Campaign. And there are occasions in almost all of our work lives when we need a chunk of time to care for a newborn or a seriously ill family member. And but this is impossible here in New York State and in this country for so many workers because we are one of only 2 nations without government-guaranteed paid family leave. And the United States and Papua New Guinea alone fail to provide paid family leave. And last Friday, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics released their latest data on U.S. workers' access to paid family leave. And sadly, it shows that just 12% of private sector workers in this country have access to paid family leave through their employers, and only 40% have access to employer-provided short-term disability insurance. So what this says and what it means is the occasional need to care for a dad who's had a heart attack or to welcome a newly adopted child can push a family into financial disaster. So that's why we've been working hard here in New York State. And this past session, we passed a paid family leave insurance bill in the Assembly. But the Senate went home for the summer without bringing the measure to a vote. And this bill will provide workers with up to 12 weeks of paid leave a year to care for a new child or a seriously ill family member. And the benefit will be entirely employee paid through small payroll deductions, which start at 45 cents a week in the first year and increase to about 88 cents a week when the law is fully phased in after 4 years. And this program is going to piggyback on our existing temporary disability insurance program so that there will be no new administrative requirements for businesses. And the bill calls for modernizing our TDI insurance program by bringing disability benefits, which have been frozen for the past 25 years here in New York State, at the meager level of $170 a week, up to an adequate level for today's cost of living. And the small added cost of raising the temporary disability insurance premiums will just be $1.21 a week per worker in the first year. And this will increase after 4 years. It will be $2.03 a year. And by the fourth year, the benefit level would be brought up to approximately $600 a week. And these increased insurance premiums, the cost would be shared between employers and employees as it is now. And we've built a strong coalition. We're continuing to expand it. It includes many diverse organizations across the state that represent labor, women's, children's, seniors, public health, faith, people dealing with chronic diseases, and people who care about economic and racial justice, and people who care about ending poverty. And momentum has been building for paid family leave around the country. California, New Jersey, and Rhode Island have already passed it by modernizing their state temporary disability programs to pay out the benefit. And all the studies that have been done show that any concerns that businesses would be negatively impacted have not borne out. And we know that policies that enable women to remain in the workforce are going to boost the economy overall. And polling that we've done of both voters and small business owners in New York State show New Yorkers overwhelmingly favor paid family leave.
Thank you. That gives us a lot more to work for to bring it to the finish line. Now I'd love to speak to Nancy Rankin from the Community Service Society. Nancy, the Community Service Society was such a strong player in the broad coalition working tirelessly around the paid sick leave law in New York City. Can you tell us a little bit about this key accomplishment? Was it easy, or as I'm assuming, as my mother used to say in Spanish, no fue fácil? I have a feeling it was not easy.
Well, it wasn't easy, but we won, so that's the bottom line. Thanks very much for having me on. I think that the first challenge we faced was really just raising awareness of what the problem was, because many of us who are middle-income people just take having paid sick days for granted. But nationally, 40% of private sector workers don't have a single paid sick days. And we knew from our own research at Community Service Society that nearly half of workers in New York did not have any paid sick leave before we passed this law. But there's a big difference by income group. So 70% of low-wage workers didn't have a single paid sick day. And of course, those are the workers who can least afford to go without pay if they get sick or if their kids get sick. So Donna was speaking about the need for paid family leave, which is for these occasional needs when you need several weeks, when you have a newborn or a seriously ill, aging parent, for example. But we all have these routine illnesses, and I think it was shocking that so many of us, and that the majority of low-wage workers, didn't have any paid sick days. So I think that was our first challenge, just raising awareness, making it an issue, breaking through in New York City, which is a hard environment to break through in. We were never challenged on the basic health and economic security arguments. The opposition basically said, we understand this, it's common sense, it makes sense, but business can't afford it, it's going to be a job killer. And they raised this specter of the job killer, which basically is the same tired argument that's raised against every single progressive labor policy, from the minimum wage to the living wage to environmental protections. But at the time, it was 2009, and you recall that we were still in the depths of the recession, so that was a hard argument to fight. And there were elected officials who said, now's not the right time, we can't do it in the current economy. But we made a very strong a case. We said when you have a law, it creates a level playing field, then everyone, no one's at a competitive disadvantage. We had the strong research and the numbers. We had data from all the other localities that already had paid sick days laws in place. And we could say clearly the sky didn't fall, business did just fine, this works. We assembled a broad coalition, all the same players Donna mentioned, women, unions, Working Families Party, public health groups, faith community, Latinos. We had persistence. It was a 4-year fight. There were many times that we were declared dead in the press, but we came back. And ultimately, we were able to make this an issue in the mayoral campaign, in the mayoral race. And there was just enormous public support that said, this is a basic labor standard and New Yorkers need to have this.
How is the program working? What's the response so far of workers and businesses? And no jobs killed, from what I know, right?
No jobs killed. New York's economy is growing. It's improving. Restaurant industry is thriving. The de Blasio administration, is their very first legislative act, in fact, expanded paid sick days to cover more workers, bringing it down to 5. If your business has 5 or more workers, you're entitled to 1 hour of paid sick time for every 30 hours worked, up to 5 days a year. If it's a smaller business, under 5, then you're entitled to 5 unpaid days, so at least you can't be fired. And the de Blasio administration has just done a terrific job uniting with all the advocates that work so hard to make it happen, doing tremendous outreach. I think you probably all saw those great posters, the yellow and blue posters on the subways, the wraparounds on the free newspapers that were given out in the morning, the TV ads, all the trainings that are being done both by the city as well as advocates like Better Balance, Community Service Society, Make the Road New York. And we're just all joining together to get the word out, because of course you can pass a law, but it only makes a difference in people's lives if people are aware of it and businesses comply with it.
Thank you, thank you. Well, congratulations for that wonderful success and for telling us about it.
Thank you.
Adamola, you represent 100,000 workers in retail and wholesale. There is a lot of discussion about the need these days for flexible schedules for workers to accommodate the demands of either caring for children or elders or sick relatives. And for many workers, having flexibility can sometimes almost trump salary. I want to ask you, how are policies around flexibility or hurting workers? what's your take, especially with your constituency?
So the RWDSU represents a lot of workers in retail, and currently the idea of flexibility in scheduling is something that hurts retail workers because it's flexibility for the employer. So you have something called on-call shifting, where employers basically put retail workers on call. So it's not bad enough that workers have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, because obvious things like a low minimum wage, these are low wage paying jobs. But now you have an employer that tells a worker, I might need you on Thursday. So call me in the morning and I'll let you know if I need you to come in at 10 a.m. So if the worker has a second job, they now have to call in on Thursday in order to make sure they can keep the second job. But if I have to report one place, I either have to cancel, and then in the case of a lot of, females in retail, of women in retail, you have to find childcare at the last minute, or if you're going to school, you have to make arrangements to try and juggle around your schedule. So flexible scheduling in the retail industry has nothing to do with benefiting the worker. It's about benefiting the employer and negatively affecting the workers. So,
what's your? I want to ask you a question, and we hadn't discussed this, but there was a very powerful article in the Times this week in the New York Times by Rachel Swarns about the Dunkin' Donuts employee who was holding 3 different shifts at 3 different Dunkin' Donuts. So tired, exhausted, sleep deprived that she parked her car to get a couple of hours sleep within one of her shifts and died, probably through some type of exhaust. A dramatic story, but in terms of the kind of work that you're doing and other people of goodwill, what's the lesson there for us, and the type of work that you're doing? How can we be part of that?
So the takeaway from that, I saw that story, it's that story can be repeated, not with the loss of life, but just people juggling 3 jobs, having to go to one job in the morning, another in the afternoon, and another the next morning. It's all over retail. And what we're trying to do is we're working with the Fair Work Schedules Coalition. There's a national bill that will address this, and working to introduce bills at the city and state level that would make that would discourage employers from using these unfair work schedules to program workers. So for our union, we have put in contracts that prevent employers from using these type of scheduling in a way to negatively affect workers. So these programs that create on-call shifting can be used in a way that helps workers or negatively affects them. With unionization, we're able to use them to help the workforce. So we'll be introducing legislation around fair work schedules on the state level, hopefully sometime soon, and the city level. And our hope is that to create coalitions like Donna and Nancy around paid sick days, which we were a part of, to help build that fight to make sure we can have better work schedules for all of our members and people that aren't our members who work in these sectors, because a union can do so much. A unionization is a great thing, but until we get every job, we make every job a union job, we'll have laws that set a baseline that people can live on.
So the union piece, if you get that effectuated, will help union workers, if I understand you correctly, but people who are not in the union are going to need a law to protect them.
Yes, and we're working on both ends. So we're organizing every day to bring more people in the union, but we're also working on the legislative end to make sure that people who aren't in the union can be protected from these practices.
Terrific. So what's our call to action? This is our final call to action question, and I'm going to ask each one of you, Nancy first, how can we work with government and business to make these and other changes to benefit a more modern workforce?
Well, I think that we have to ask our candidates who are running for office. I mean, we have election coming up in November. It's an important election for state offices, and we have to ask them, Where do you stand on these issues? Where do you stand on paid family leave? Where do you stand on expanding paid sick days, for example, statewide? So we have to make these threshold questions that we ask our elected officials.
Is there any place that you would refer folks to look up and to get sensitized as to what questions they should be asking in particular?
Well,
the work that you do.
Right. Well, certainly on all our websites, people should go to the cssny.org website. They can go to the Time to Care website to get information on paid family leave in particular, on minimum wage, on all these issues affecting low-wage workers in New York. New York is a state that is the next logical place to enact paid family leave, because we're one of the 5 states that has a temporary disability insurance system already in place, which is the basic building block for this. And 3 out of the 5 states, California, Rhode Island, and New Jersey next door, have already modernized their temporary disability insurance to provide paid family leave. We have legislation that has been introduced. We could very easily do this in New York, and we should be the next state to do it. And so I think when we have an opportunity to meet with people who are campaigning, who are seeking our votes, we need to ask them, where do they stand on these important issues?
Thank you. And Donna, same call to action question, where we're talking directly to the folks who are watching us today. How can government and business work together on these changes to benefit the modern workforce?
Carol, could you repeat that again?
Yes.
Your last remarks were blocked out.
Yes. How can government and business work together and to create changes to benefit the modern workforce?
Well, certainly business and government can work together. Business can go along and support these changes that we need government to make in order to improve the lives of workers. As I said before, there's only 12% of workers in this country that get paid family leave through their employers. So do we have to wait 100 years for more of the employers to provide it? No. What should be happening is, and we have many businesses that have signed on in support of our paid family leave bill, and we are working to grow this list. And we have some excellent spokespeople in terms of a big business, Tom Nides from Morgan Stanley, one of the high-level officials at Morgan Stanley, has come out publicly in favor of paid family leave and has said that the New York State Legislature needs to pass a bill. He totally gets it, as do many other business leaders, and we are working to meet with the business trade associations, which have been blocking this bill in New York State, just as they try to block every piece of progressive legislation that has come before the New York State Legislature. And we have the data on how well paid family leave works. California has had their law in effect for a little over 10 years. And businesses that were initially opposed to it now feel they're happy with it. And they say that, it wasn't the doomsday that they had predicted. And employee loyalty has increased greatly. And it's really hard to measure productivity increases, but they feel that productivity has improved as well. And, these are the kinds of things that we need New York the business associations to pay attention to, so that they will stop blocking this bill getting through the New York State Legislature and signed by the governor.
Good, very good advice. Thank you. Adamola, what is the call to action that you would present to our folks today? Government and business to make these changes to benefit the modern workforce, or is it a call to action to our electeds, or is it another group or constituency that we haven't spoken about?
Well, the call to action I would first say is directed at the workers. Until workers start figuring out a way to collectively act towards demanding changes of businesses and elected officials, nothing will really get done. So our call to action is to the workers to figure out ways to work together to move an agenda that changes their work life, and then to business and to government to create policies that can benefit the employer. We represent workers at Macy's, where they use the same software for scheduling, and it doesn't hurt the workforce because the workforce is unionized. So when retailers say there's only one way to use this software, as if folks saw the Times piece on Starbucks by Jody Cantor, you would see Starbucks says you can only use the software negatively, while a unionized employer uses the software and the workers benefit from it. So we're looking for businesses to understand that government legislating the way they do business can benefit them. It's proven, and for workers to decide to band together to make sure government will set a level for you. But when you work together, you can make sure that level gets higher every year and no one can take it away from you.
Excellent point. Thank you. And also another thing to remember is government is made up of workers also. So the government employees also benefit from almost every single policy that's been spoken about today, right? And if we take New York City as a microcosm, I may get my numbers wrong, so don't kill me, folks, but I think you're talking at least 350,000 people. That's a lot of workers as well. Is that right?
A lot.
So somebody was going to speak, yes.
Yes, it's Nancy. I just wanted to add that this hangout is called PowHer, and we should remember that we have the power to change things. We, in America, we tend to think of these as individual problems that we all face, and we're trying to negotiate individually with our particular employer. Well, particularly low-wage workers don't have a lot of leverage with their employers. But if we come together, we can change the system, and that's what we need to do. We need to change the way the workplace is organized. We need to change our labor laws. We need to unionize. We need to make bigger changes. These are not problems and issues we can solve one at a time. We have to rise up above our individual cubicles and see that everyone around us is facing the same problems, and together we can change it.
You know what? I'm going to submit my little call to action as well, just following up on your comment. And it's a little bit of what Legal Momentum does, and it's really encouraging people, if they have been the subject of some type of misfeasance or malfeasance, a woman, many times there are other women involved. It's really important to get a lawyer's advice if you are in a workplace setting, and especially if you're talking about multiple workers, to get the advice of your union, of a lawyer. So I always encourage folks to really seek counsel if you feel that there's an opportunity to help the next person and to work as a group. We just did an incredible case with 4 female construction workers that were all fired. They were in the same location as soon as they got pregnant. And it was through the power of bringing a case together with Legal Momentum, with the EEOC, that we're able to work with that employer to create lasting change that then you emulate to the rest of the industry. So it's your point is so well taken, and how we work collaboratively on that. I am going to now officially thank our wonderful panelists for joining us today on this Google Hangout, and it's going to be posted on the website newyorkstatepowher.org. Now this is where I look at the folks that are watching us, and pick out your list. Like we're going to write down the things that you're going to be following up. And number one, make sure you're registered to vote. This is nonpartisan. No one's telling you who to vote for. But be sure to vote, and vote on November 4th. Now is the time to ask your candidate, your candidates, how he or she will tackle your number one power list issue. If they won't tackle the issue, don't vote for them. That's you need to come in with a wonderful focused agenda. I suggest that you stay connected by signing up for future PowHer activities, and be sure to tune in next Wednesday, where the Women's Equality Wednesday Hangout will be a wonderful topic on reproductive options, domestic violence, and child care, and how it affects women's economic opportunities. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.